maybe we are looking for a candidate who leads with his Christian faith first. You know, when people say to me, well, I'm looking for a president, not a pastor. Well, maybe I'm looking for both, right? Maybe I'm looking for someone who leads with Christ first. And I'm not sure why that is, for so many people, an unreasonable goal. I think it's completely within reason. And I think that's really what, as you're talking about, that's really what you're calling us to do, is to look for leaders and with a conscience, right? With a Christian conscience. I feel like that's really what you're calling us to do, and to call upon our own conscience, you know, to stop making excuses for bad behavior, to stop making excuses for demonic behavior, to call it out, to root it out, and to say, we will not have this anymore. We are looking for something better.
You've nailed it, Abby.
All right, and welcome back to another episode of Politely Rude with Abby Johnson. So glad that you have joined us again. Today, we have another exciting guest for you, Dr. Taylor Marshall. Dr. Marshall is the #1 lay Catholic influencer in the world, a best-selling author, Catholic philosopher, and cultural commentator whose voice has become essential for millions seeking clarity on the church's role in modern society. #1 lay Catholic. I thought that was me, Taylor. I'm just kidding. A former Anglican priest turned Catholic, he brings deep insight rooted in Thomistic theology and classical philosophy. He served on the Catholics for Trump coalition, and his best-selling book, Infiltration, The Plot to Destroy the Church from Within, which was a very good book, was recently cited by CNN as a leading voice in the rise of hyper-conservative Catholic thought. We like that very much. He also hosts a YouTube channel with over 1.3 million subscribers, where he speaks boldly on church corruption, American decline, family breakdown, and what faithful Christians can do to reclaim truth. His new book, Christian Patriot, is a call to action, outlining 12 strategies for rebuilding a nation under God and standing firm in a culture that is increasingly hostile to faith and order. Welcome to the show, Dr. Marshall.
Thanks, Abby. It's good to be back, and we've collaborated over the years, so I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
Yeah. So first of all, tell everybody on the audience, a lot of people are going to know who you are, but tell us a little bit about just who Taylor Marshall is. Tell us a little bit about your family. You have an extraordinary family, so kind of start there.
Okay, so I'm married. My wife is Joy. We have 8 children, and we live in Texas. Of the 8, we just moved number 4 into college this past weekend, which was very emotional for my wife. And we have 1 engaged, and we're definitely moving into the adult children phase of our life, though we also have children at home. So yeah, we're blessed. We live in Texas, and I'm an author, professor, run the New St. Thomas Institute, and happy to be here and appreciate your work and all your work in the pro-life sphere and your Catholic faith. So yeah,
That's awesome.
That's Taylor Marshall.
That's awesome. Tell everybody, because I feel like this is a question I get a lot, and so I'm going to ask you so that you can sort of give a quick rundown. I get asked all the time, you know, Abby, you were Baptist, then Episcopalian. You know, how did you come to be a Catholic? You were an Anglican priest who came into the Catholic Church. What was it that sort of led you down that road?
A big part of it was the pro-life movement. I was an Anglican or Episcopalian priest in Fort Worth, Texas, And the bishop actually asked me to kind of be the point guy for pro-life ministry. He was pro-life, I was pro-life. And so every Thursday, we would celebrate our version of the Holy Eucharist, not a Catholic Mass, but we would do that on Thursday mornings. I think it's 7 a.m. at the church. And then a group of us, Anglicans, Episcopalians, would go to Planned Parenthood. And that was a morning in which they would be taking in patients. And so we would pray outside. Well, every Thursday morning, the Catholics were always there. So, we numbered like 8 to 12 people, but when the Catholics were there, it was like 20 to 30. Mm-hmm. And there's always a young dynamic Catholic priest who was there. So I was there in my collar, he was there in his collar. And, as the clergy, we would often, like, if a girl stopped and wanted to talk, we would pray with her or talk with her. But just being out there, week after week and seeing the Catholics and their zeal and their devotion and just kind of their humility and their love for these young women and these families that were coming in. Occasionally would have saves, most of the time not. And I remember in particular, there was this one woman. She was probably, maybe late 30s, early 40s. You could obviously tell she was very well-to-do. And I remember just seeing her kneeling in the gravel. This Planned Parenthood was in a bad part of town, kneeling in the gravel, praying the rosary. And I thought to myself, these people have something that I don't have. They have a great love. They have a great devotion. And then as I was doing this ministry, one of the leaders in our parish wanted to meet with me privately. And he said, Father Taylor, you preach pro-life stuff. You're doing this pro-life stuff, but there's some people in the parish who are a little bit uncomfortable with what you're doing. And I was like, well, why is that? And he's like, well, it's political. You're doing politics, and we're just here to worship and go to church and hear sermons and be lifted up. We don't like that you're bringing in politics. Because I'll also mention it in the pulpit, like join us on Thursdays and whatnot. And so I said, well, it's thou shalt not kill. Like, it's not politics. It's thou shalt not kill. It's like, yeah, but it's very much like a Republican talking point. And I'm Republican, but we just kind of feel that you shouldn't be talking about this and making people feel uncomfortable. And we went back and forth, and I pushed on him. And then at a certain point, he said, well, that your insurance, which is covered by the Episcopal Church, covers abortion, right? Mm. Now, I didn't know that as an Episcopal priest, but it turns out that was actually true. Our insurance covered for clergy to have abortion. And I was like, he goes, so really what you're pushing is kind of against what we hold as Episcopalians. And that was a big gut check for me. I thought, I'm actually working for an institution that on paper technically is pro-choice. Mm-hmm. And as I had these conversations, I started to realize, like, I was young. I was in my late 20s. I'm an ordained clergyman, an ordained priest in the Episcopal Church. And I don't have the actual tools to counter someone like this in my congregation. They actually have tools against me. And I was like, if I were Catholic, like these people I see on Thursday morning, I could cite the Catechism, or I could cite Humanae Vitae, or some documents, or say the Pope says. I really have none of that. I can, do some philosophy. I can do some natural law. I can, take some Bible verses, like, before you were formed in your mother's womb, I knew you, and kind of do like some pro-life apologetics. But as a Episcopal priest, I have no magisterial authority or anyone to really back me up. And that was a horrifying revelation in my life. And so that was, I think, there was many things that happened. Of course, coming to know about the Blessed Virgin Mary and other such things. But that right there was a big trigger where I was like, I don't know if I could do this for the next 50 years. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to have to play tennis back and forth with these people, and I'm kind of on the lower ground. Like, I don't really have a strong position against people who are going to be against me in the pro-life arena. So that was really a big moment for me. And then later on, my wife and I went on our 5-year anniversary to Rome, and we visited the Vatican, and we were given tickets to go to the Scavi, which you go underneath the high altar in St. Peter's. Have you done it, Abby?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I was not Catholic. We went down there and we saw the bones of St. Peter. And I was completely overwhelmed by that because I'm like, this is Peter, who I've read about so many times in the Gospels, walked on water with Jesus Christ. And everyone kind of left that little chapel area where the bones are. They're kind of in acrylic cases.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually prayed to Peter. I was like, Peter, if this is real, I need to somehow be a Catholic. And then after that event, a priest who was on that tour with us, he said, you asked a lot of questions. Who are you? And I said, I'm Episcopal priest. He goes, oh, you should go to Mass with the Pope tonight. So we got his tickets and we went to, it was February 2nd, and we went to the Feast of the Presentation with Pope Benedict at the high altar in the Vatican at St. Peter's. And during that Mass, it was so connected to me because I realized below that altar is the bones of Peter. Standing directly above that on the altar is Pope Benedict. There's a continuity here that I cannot deny. I need this. And so it came time for communion. I was wearing a collar, because I was an Episcopalian priest, and I was standing right by the bronze statue of St. Peter that's in the Vatican. And I was standing there, and all these nuns were, like, Padre, communion. They wanted me to go up to communion, and we're making, and I was like, no, I can't go up. And they were kind of looking at me like, some priest you are. And I just knew in that moment that, and people kind of think I'm crazy for saying this, but I really do think there was some kind of illumination of conscience in that moment, because I knew in that moment, I actually got physically sick to my stomach. And I knew that I was outside the one true church, the Catholic Church. I knew that I was technically a heretic, a schismatic, and I knew that I had to enter. And if I didn't enter, I would jeopardize my soul. So it was really in that moment was the moment of my conversion to the Catholic faith. Now I had to go home and renounce my orders in the Episcopal Church and meet with the Catholic bishop. And there was a whole process. But that was the moment where I knew I have to become a Catholic.
Now there are people, there are men who were Anglican priests that did become Catholic priests, right? There was a way to kind of do that. Was that ever a consideration for you?
Yeah. So actually, when I left the Episcopal priesthood, my wife was pregnant with number 4. I had no job. I was like, how am I going to get insurance? How am I going to pay the bills? And so my first job, I was hired by the Catholic Information Center in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. And part of my job while I was there was to work on what's called the pastoral provision, which that was the means by which Episcopal priests come into the Catholic Church. They do like 2 years of seminary studies, and then they're ordained as married men as Catholic priests. There's several dozen of them in the United States. And so early on, I was actually brought into the process by Cardinal McCarrick, and later who would be Cardinal Farrell. I met with them, and they're like, yeah, you'll be a married Catholic priest. So I was actually working in the office that processes those applications, and I myself was in that process to become a married Catholic priest. But I went through it about a year, and I just discerned, we're having baby number 4. We're going to have more children. As I learned more about the merits of celibacy and how the Catholic priesthood is so much different than the Episcopal priesthood, I just discerned I'm not called to this. Mm-hmm. And so I removed myself from the process. I'm technically able to go back in if I wanted to and pursue it, but I don't think that's God's plan for my life.
Yeah.
So I didn't pursue that.
Yeah. And God has put you in this position now to really educate people on the church and even just what is happening inside of the church and how we can arm ourselves against corruption. We hate to think about corruption taking place in the church, but it happens. It's sin, right? And as long as we are alive until Jesus returns, sin will abound, right? And so God has really taken you into this place to expose that, but also to call us to a place of holiness as well. You wrote Infiltration, which was a huge hit, I guess, but also it was an awakening, I think, for a lot of people as well. You've gone on to write this book, Christian Patriot. did you feel like you needed to expand sort of beyond? I haven't read it honestly yet. So, did you feel like you needed to sort of expand beyond just a Catholic audience and talk to, all people of faith? Because this is what's happening in our country is not just affecting Catholics. This is affecting, all Americans. This is affecting all churches. All people need to rise up and take our country back. So, with that in mind, I mean, is that kind of what you were thinking whenever you were writing this book?
Yeah, this is my 12th book. It's my first book written to a more general Christian audience.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, I'm drawing on the Catholic tradition of natural law and Rerum Novarum and St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas, and that's in the book. So I think if someone's astute and reads Christian Patriot, they're gonna be like, this guy's obviously Catholic,
Mhm.
right? But I also, I was part of Catholics for Trump. I was kind of in the Washington D.C. Catholic scene, and I realized that, and this was years ago, even before Trump, but I think even now in 2025, conservatives were looking and were like, is Trump the end all be all?
Mhm.
Is MAGA going to go forever? Like, I know, Donald Trump helped, the process for overturning Roe v. Wade, and it's a huge win. But I'm just sitting here as a Catholic, as a Christian, as a father, as a husband, maybe looking at grandchildren over the next 10 years. And I'm thinking, are we all going to be wearing the red hat, the MAGA hat in 10 years?
Right.
What is next for us as conservatives, and what are we trying to conserve? And we've had some big wins, the Roe v. Wade situation, but now we're moving, and you've talked a lot about this, we're moving into the states. And I think one of the things that we've seen over the last, well, really since Barack Obama all the way forward, is we've seen a decline in the American culture. And it's not just in politics, it's throughout, where degeneracy is no longer just tolerated, it's actually promoted.
Right.
And if you're opposed to it, you can actually be canceled. You could lose your job, you could be debanked, you could be doxxed. Like we're really have moved into an epoch in America where Christian values are not just no longer respected, but there's a hostility towards them. And so in this book, I wanted to challenge conservatives. And I'm talking, everyone from Tucker Carlson, that whole group, right? Is conserving fiscal policies and MAGA talking points, is that enough for us to take back America, the West, Europe? And honestly, it's not, right? What makes us great? What made us great? What made Europe great was the church, was Christianity. It was the teachings of Christ. It's the Beatitudes. It's a mentality. It's a theology. And that's how we got the universities and the schools and literacy and orphanages and hospitals and civil liberties, all the wonderful things that are great. Is not just because the founding fathers had a few good ideas in the late 1700s. It's because they were breathing the air that was left over from Christendom. And Christendom is it's like the house of Christ. That's what it means in Latin. It's Christian domos. Can we as Christians live that way again? And I think we can. That's the white pill. The black pill is we're in a lot of trouble. The white pill is, over 50 nations in the last 2,000 years have created Christian cultures, Christian nations that are led by Christian principles. And the opening of the book is, I say, if you go to someone and say, hey, should, Muslims have Muslim laws and culture and norms and all that? Is that okay? And like, yeah, they're Muslim. And okay, Israel has Jewish laws and Jewish customs and Jewish laws. Yeah. India has Hindu laws, Hindu customs. Yeah. Can people with a 50% plus majority Christian have a Christian laws, Christian culture, Christians? No, you can't do that. That's fascist. That's bad.
Right.
So Christianity is this exception, and it's culturally tolerated that we can't have our own culture. And so this book, Christian Patriotism, is a call. First of all, it gives you sort of the theological or philosophical basis for understanding that there can be a true and healthy relationship between church and state. And then it looks at the American founding, what's good, what's bad, what's ugly. Thomas Jefferson, in the book, I really expose like his relationship with his slaves, his personal life was bad. And Thomas Jefferson explicitly said, the Trinity is wrong. Christ didn't rise from the dead. Christ didn't do miracles. He issued his own Bible, the Jeffersonian Bible, where he removes all the miracles. So like, if you look at Jefferson, he would be hand in hand with AOC today. Like, he is not a friend of the Christian people. And yet we were taught in public high school and in college, like Thomas Jefferson, this great hero, this wonderful guy. So I'm calling for Christians to reassess those elements of the founders. There's other founders like Jay Adams who are very explicitly Christian and promoting Christianity. We need to be a little bit more critical about our founding. And then the rest of the book is 12 steps to create a Christian nation. And that's sort of the manifesto. That's the game plan. The steps are things like personal conversion is the first, definition of matrimony and marriage, birth rates. I was on Patrick Bet David, and we spent a lot of time. He realizes that if your culture's birth rate is under 2.1, you go extinct within generation. It's just math. I know it hurts people's feelings and they get upset about it, but it's just a graph. It's math. Under 2.1 births per woman, you go extinct. And we Christians need to talk about that. Like, even the Catholic population is around 2 or a little bit over 2. Traditional Catholics are a little over 4 births per children. But you look at Muslims, you look at Mormons, you look at Amish, they're doing pretty good too. So also foreign policy, we should be doing, as a Christian nation, our foreign policy should be in concert with places like Hungary, Poland, who are also promoting traditional values, Christian values, marriage, family. Instead of just being about oil and war, we should be thinking about a federation, a brotherhood of Christian civilizations that are working together. And that's what really, before the Reformation, what we had. We had a brotherhood of Christian nations in Christendom who shared the same morals, the same faith. They all believed in the Trinity. They believed in Jesus Christ, that he rose from the dead, that he was Lord of Lords, King of Kings. And I think American conservatives have set the bar too low. And this book, Christian Patriot, is let's set the bar higher. It's been done before. We can do it, but we have to address the degeneracy that's among us. And we can't tolerate it as if it's okay. It's out there. It's in the schools. It's in the libraries. It's marching down Main Street. And it's in the films and it's in the TV shows. And our children are getting bombarded on it with it from social media and their iPhones, and just shrug and say, yeah, it'll somehow work out. No, we have to be proactive. And so the book Christian Patriot is written to that conservative audience saying, here's how we do it, and here are 12 steps for accomplishing it.
Well, and can I say, it's also within our own movement. And this is something that people don't really want to talk about either. But, I remember just being absolutely horrified at the Republican National Convention when the log cabin Republicans opened the RNC. I remember being horrified when on Trump's website, he had Trump merchandise with, the gay flag on it. Yeah. Horrified when our supposed pro-life president agreed with the Biden administration on the distribution of the deadly chemical abortion pills. I think that as a movement, even in our own pro-life movement, even certainly in the MAGA movement, which I completely am not a part of, we have allowed for too much because we simply say, well, we want a leader, not a pastor. But our leader is sending us into hell. Our leader is promoting things that are absolutely heretical. Our leader is promoting things that literally come from the depths of hell. Homosexuality, abortion, IVF. At some point in time, when do we, as Christians, as a movement, say, we've had enough? We cannot support this anymore. We cannot support a man who believes in these things any longer. We cannot support candidates who believe in these things anymore. Maybe we are looking for a candidate who leads with his Christian faith first. You know, when people say to me, well, I'm looking for a president, not a pastor. Well, maybe I'm looking for both, right? Maybe I'm looking for someone who leads with Christ first. And I'm not sure why that is, for so many people, an unreasonable goal. I think it's completely within reason. And I think that's really what as you're talking about, that's really what you're calling us to do, is to look for leaders and with a conscience, right? With a Christian conscience. I feel like that's really what you're calling us to do, and to call upon our own conscience, you know, to stop making excuses for bad behavior, to stop making excuses for demonic behavior, to call it out, to root it out, and to say, we will not have this anymore. We are looking for something better.
You've nailed it, Abby. And we've also seen not only the degeneracy, is we've seen a double standard. So you'll see in these Muslim communities, like in Michigan, Minnesota, those candidates in New York, they're already pushing Islam as part of their platform. Mm-hmm. And yet people tolerate that. But if, let's just imagine, we have candidates from presidency on down who say, I am a Christian and Christianity is going to influence the way I lead, people are going to lose it. But yet, you know, we have AIPAC, we have all of these Jewish people who are promoting policies that directly benefit Jewish people in the nation of Israel. Mm. And everyone shrugs and says, that's fine. Again, it's a double standard that someone can't come along, as you said, and say, I am leading from the point of view of the teachings of Jesus Christ. You can come along and say, I'm leading from the point of view of Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or whoever you want. But why can't someone come along and say, I am the message of Jesus Christ, who I believe in, who rose from the dead, the Beatitudes, the parables, the moral teaching, the dignity that it brings mankind, that is where I am coming from, and I am going to lead from there. And we Christians should not be embarrassed to say, well, marriage is defined in the Bible as this.
Right.
Human life is defined in the Bible as this. We can use natural law. I wrote a PhD thesis on natural law. But we can also bring our Christian faith. And when you look at the founding of America and you look at the original 13 colonies in the States, I show it in the book, there are oaths that have to be taken to enter into political office and promises that you believe in the Trinity. Some states said you have to believe in the Old and New Testament. Right. This is early America. Mm-hmm. So if early America was founded in the idea that you can't hold office unless you believe in the Trinity or you don't believe in the Old and New Testaments, that is part of who we are as a people. So early on, there were states, there were communities that said, no, these are the standards we hold to for our leaders, and we are going to enforce those. Now, those have all been eroded and taken away, especially after the Civil War into the 1900s. But even into the early 1900s, I give the number, I can't remember how many, but the majority of the United States, the actual individual states, required the Bible in the curriculum. So, you know, this is who we are as a people. I don't even think they went far enough. And if you look at the history of Christianity over 2,000 years, there are all these nations: Armenia, the Roman Empire, Greece, England, Scotland, Portugal, Spain, Poland, Holy Roman Empire. All of these people successfully, again, there have been sins and problems throughout all this, but all of these nations successfully for centuries had a Christian understanding of what it means to be a nation. And it endured for centuries, and it was successful. Was there sin? Was there abuse? Yes. But it's a whole lot better than what we have right now. And the idea, well, I want a president, not a pastor. We're not asking that the church, run the sewage plant and the bishop be the mayor.
Right.
We're not asking for a complete takeover. That's never been Christianity. We are asking that our leaders who are baptized, who are Christian, don't bifurcate themselves into two different people.
Right.
And this actually, JFK was probably really the first Catholic to publicly say, well, I'm Catholic, but I'm not going to allow it to affect my policies. That was a critical mistake. But that was the 1960s, and there's all this optimism. And I talk in the book, the post-World War II consensus created this sort of vacuum where everyone's going to be non-religious and gentlemen and be prudent and be rational in the public square. That was a lie from the devil, because we all said, okay, we won't bring our faith to the public square. And then this new secular religion entered that vacuum. And they have clergy, they have feast days, they have a whole month in June, they have parades, they have their own clergy, they have an inquisition. It's called being canceled. Mm-hmm. They have every feature of a religion, and yet they say, we're not a religion. We're not a religion.
Right.
They are a religion. They are the religion that is seeking to displace the Christian majority in America. We have to identify it. We have to square up, and we have to win. And so I think what it's going to take is the voting public to say enough is enough. We don't want trans MAGA, LGBT MAGA. We don't want IVF. We actually believe all babies in the womb have personhood. They are American citizens. And these are the platforms that we're going to stand on, because it's just going to be the frog in the pot. It's just going to keep boiling. And the Republican Party in 10 years is going to look just like the Democratic Party. Right. Why? Because they don't have the philosophical and theological basis to conserve whatever they are conserving as conservatives. So we're at a point, and I think if you look at Gen Z, Abby, particularly the young men and the voting patterns, they are more and more, I think, disillusioned with what's happening. And you're kind of seeing a gravitation to either race politics or religious politics, and they often overlap. That's going to become more and more real. And if Christian leaders and politicians and pastors and people who are our age and over don't understand that and don't appreciate that, I think we're going to miss an opportunity, and we might have more problems because of that. We have to bring guidance to what does it mean to be a Christian patriot.
Yeah, I completely agree. I speak a lot on college campuses and not religious college camp. I mean, I speak on secular college campuses, and these college Republicans, the YAF groups, pro-life groups that I'll be in contact with when I'm there on campus. I completely agree. They are the generation that is questioning, why have we been doing it this way? Right. And yes. And why aren't we doing it a better way? Why aren't we doing it a different way? I see this particularly with abortion. They're asking the question, so we've been saying abortion is murder for over 50 years. Why aren't we treating abortion as murder? And the pro-life movement, kind of the company pro-life movement is saying, well, it is, but we're actually not going to charge it as murder. And their question is, why? We should be charging it as murder. And they are hungry for that. I think they're hungry for justice. They are hungry for consistency. I think they are completely disillusioned with both parties, to be perfectly honest. And I think they want to restore what they believe conservatism should be. And I'm seeing that so much, like you said, particularly from young men on these campuses. And it's amazing to see. It's beautiful to see. And I think we're going to continue to see that growth in years to come. And I think a lot of it, though, comes from us as parents, how we're raising them. We're raising them to be strong. We're raising them to be vocal, and to have questions, and to question authority, to question these professors that are trying to, shove things down their throat, or, tell them to not have questions, to just kind of go with the flow, to accept everything, to tolerate everything. And, we have to be telling our children, no, you don't. Push back, fight back, and stand for what you believe in. And you're giving us these 12 strategies to help our children do that, and to help us do that, but for us to be the model to our children.
Would you be okay if I kind of went through the 12 strategies?
Please.
Just a quick rundown.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so the first one is self-conversion. Like, you can't get active in the public space if you're not living in grace, like you're not connected to God through Jesus Christ. Like, what's the point of just rattling off points and getting into the debates if you yourself are not, living in the love and grace of Jesus Christ? So the first one is personal conversion, the sanctifying and hallowing of your marriage and your family, right? So that's the basic unit. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, natural law, the Stoics, the church fathers, Augustine, Aquinas, John Adams, they all say the basic building block of a nation is the family. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the Lego brick, right? That's how you build everything. And what the new secular religion is doing is it's deforming and melting the Lego brick, which is the family, redefining the family so that brick no longer fits with other bricks and builds a society. So that's why they're attacking the family. So that's the very first, is personal conversion, personal sanctity, living the teachings of Christ. There's like 10 pages in the book. I went through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and found every single time Jesus tells us to do something. And I just listed it. It's over 200 things. And I'm like, just, as a reader, read through this with a pencil and just say, I need to work on this. I just wanted people to say, Jesus tells us to do these things. Are we doing those things? Yeah. So that's the first strategy.
Just do the 200 things, guys. Just do it.
Yeah, just do it. The second strategy is define matrimony. Mm-hmm. We as a Christian people must insist loudly over and over, matrimony was created and invented by God. He defines it. It's in Genesis. Mm-hmm. He ratifies it and confirms it and raises it to the level of a sacrament in the Gospel of John, in Jesus Christ. That's it. We will not accept anything else except for that definition. No compromise, no going to the GOP rallies and saying, well, we have to have a big tent. Everyone has to be included. Let's be reasonable. No, this is the definition. If God created it, only he can define it. Third, family and birth rates. We as a Christian people have to say, now there's many people who can't have children. All right. And that's a burden. It's a cross. It's very sad. So I'm not speaking to that at all. But if you are able to have children and you're not having children and you say you're a Christian, you need to realize that for 1900 years, people would look at you like you're insane. Being fruitful, being multiplied, and the gift of motherhood. Mm-hmm. The gift of motherhood must be one of the things that we revere and honor above all else in our culture. Yes. Matrimony, a word, Latin, comes from matris and munis, the gift and office of motherhood. These young guys, these Zoomers are like, yeah, I'd love to marry my high school sweetheart, but she's on OnlyFans now or whatever. Like, women have been told, be a boss girl, get on OnlyFans, make that cash, work in the office, build your career. And we as a culture and as a people have to say the most beautiful and dignified thing in the human race is this gift of motherhood and procreation. And until we speak like that and we act like that and our tax code is reformed for that and our culture praises that, we are not going to have over 2.1 birth rate per women.
Well, and let me say this too, and we could probably have an entire podcast on this. and I'm saying this specifically to Catholics because a lot of Catholics practice natural family planning. There is a problem in the church and the natural family planning world where natural family planning is being used as contraception. And I was recently hearing some conversations about people, and I know people myself who they are abstaining in their marriage because they are so scared to get pregnant for 6 to 12 months sometimes. And let me tell you right now, that is not what God has ordained for your marriage. You should not be that scared to have a child with your husband. And my husband and I have 8 children. Every single one of them has been a gift for us. And, I think that is causing problems in marriages. I think it's causing problems in what could be a healthy marriage. And it is completely a contraceptive mentality that needs to be rooted out of the church and needs to be rooted out of NFP. And I just wanted to say that. And it is also affecting our birth rates, even within the Catholic Church, because we have a contraceptive mentality in something that could be good, but we are turning it into something that is evil. So I did just want to say that.
Abby, you're so based. No, it's true. I mean, and it's also, we have to change the culture. Like, we have to say, wow, my daughter's having her 5th kid. It's amazing. Like, celebrating it.
Yes.
It has to be something that we lift up in our culture, and it has to be something that we condemn if people are opposed to it.
Yes.
And that's another thing that we have to be careful with. But the whole idea of shame and honor, I was watching Father Mitch Pacwa once, and someone said, "Why is there no shame anymore in culture for women, men? There's just no shame." And he said, "You have to understand, shame is the other side of the coin of honor." Yeah. And when you live in an honor-based society where honor is a currency, right? It's a measure of how a society works and how people are honored, are elevated and celebrated. If there's no honor, there can't be any shame, because shame is just the reduction of honor. Yeah. And so we have to live in an honorable society. And the way you live in an honorable society is you live in a virtue ethics-based society.
Yes.
Even the founding fathers, who were Protestants, believed that Catholic principle. I think most GOP Republicans today don't believe in that.
No, they don't.
And you see that in the movement. Yeah. And so that's why I named the book Christian Patriot, not Christian Nationalist, which is kind of more of a Protestant idea. Patriotism is a virtue under justice, according to Thomas Aquinas. And patriotism is revering or honoring the patria, which is Latin for the fatherland. And I really think it's helpful to think of, our nation. You can use the word nation. That comes from the word natus, birth, where you were born. But fatherland brings in honor your father and mother. It brings in, the clergy, who we call father. Ultimately, it lines everything up with God the Father. And so I think thinking of your country as a fatherland, and the virtue of patriotism, which is revering your fatherland and revering your fathers and revering God the Father, it really creates a religious and virtue ethics perspective on politics. So we did matrimony, we did birth rates. Number 5, you'll love this one, Abby, and that is end abortion.
Yes.
And it's not just legal, it's also cultural.
Yes.
And we have to do it with compassion and conviction. But I think, like you were saying earlier, there needs to be a little bit more of an edge to it. Mm-hmm. It can't just be like every single woman is a victim. There has to be an element of, this is a terrible thing.
Yes.
It's a terrible thing. You look at something like the Civil War, the Civil War really came to an end when people started posting pictures in the newspapers of these battlefields of just men strewn everywhere. And they're like, it's not just something I read about. I'm seeing just the carnage and the devastation that this is leaving in our culture. And so, again, I don't know how to do that, and I want to be careful where I tread there. But, we have to, I think, approach the pro-life issue and the NFP issue and the contraception issue and the IVF issue, I think, with a little bit more of an edge, while also keeping some compassion in there. So I talk about that. Number 6, school choice. our schools are wrecked, Abby. Like public schools are so wrecked right now. And I think it's really for Christians, whether you're Catholic or Protestant or Eastern Orthodox, homeschooling and creating private schools in enclaves where the kids you hang out with are living in the same, the same breath of morals and faith and Christianity, and where the teachers are also going to church and encouraging your children and what they believe is so critical. I don't see how we can take kids and teach them on Sundays and pray and do catechism and then send them into a public school system that is just pushing everything degenerate on them from K through 12 and then college. We have to rethink that. I think the reason we're losing so many young people from the church is because we're having them run through this 12 to 16 year gauntlet. How do they survive that?
Yeah.
I mean,
of course we're losing them. Yeah.
7, parental rights, whether it has to do with vaccines or school choice or transitioning your child, the parent has the natural law, God-given right over the child, not the state. That is a deeply Christian principle that we have to keep. Number 8, pornography illegal. And that includes OnlyFans. That includes soft pornography. That includes immodesty, male, female, heterosexual, homosexual. The degeneracy and the throwing up in our face of everything that is sexualized will ruin the culture. Yes. Again, how do you bring up kids from 0 to 18 when they're exposed to this 24/7? Number 9, end human trafficking and child exploitation. I also talk about border control as it relates to this. Number 10, just war, foreign policy. As a Christian nation, St. Augustine, Thomas Aquinas, they give conditions to have a war. If you don't meet those conditions, the war is not just, it's murderous. And yet the United States of America gets involved in all of these altercations. They do not tick the boxes for just war. As a Christian people, we should say, if we are going to spend the money on the budget and go into a nation and do these things, it must meet the Christian criteria of a just war. Number 11, foreign aid for persecuted Christians. Abby, we spend billions of dollars, and we saw this with, on Gay Sesame Street, like all this stuff. As a Christian nation, we should be doing Christian humanitarian work. We see priests and lay people being slaughtered and cut up to death in Nigeria. That should be our priority. Yes. In helping with these needs, not in all this other junk. And then number 12 is more of an economic, slavery to debt, inflation, taxes, and how this whole system is holding down young people, scaring them from getting married, having children, working towards that first house, buying the minivan. Like, as a culture, we need to look at our taxes, our inflation rates, and create an environment that is wholesome and welcoming for that next generation to replace us as the future families. So those are the 12 strategies. And, if your audience wants to learn more about, Christian politics, Christian philosophy as it regards to government, and then read the 12 strategies. And again, I say in the book, you don't have to do all 12, but you probably can get involved in 3 or 4 of those. Everybody
should be doing all 12 of those, honestly. I mean, that's sort of the core, I think, of just basic Christian principles. And we should be doing it. We ought to be doing it. And this is going to be my next read, Taylor. So I'm very excited. I'm going to get the book. Very excited about it. I'm going to tell everybody else to get it. Where should people get it? Where's the best place for people to get it?
So you can get it on Amazon. This morning, it hit #1 bestseller on Amazon. So that's awesome. Cool. It comes out next week. Okay. So you can pre-order it. And I'm asking everyone to pre-order it. Yes. The way things work in the book world, we want you to pre-order it because then all of those orders hit on the opening day. That's and it spikes it in the charts. So you can hit the New York Times, you can hit #1s on Amazon. And when that happens, the book kind of enters into the algorithm and can continue to snowball. So I really want this book to change the conversation of conservative politics. Yeah. I want in 4 or 5 years, people like Tucker Carlson saying, no, it should be the Christian way. Like, we have to move the Overton window that way. And so I'm asking people to pre-order it, go ahead and get the book. And that way we can make a big splash and hopefully move the discussion towards a Christian, beautiful, wholesome, family-based, safe neighborhood environment for people. And, we pray in the Our Father, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Do we really believe that? And what are we doing to accomplish it? So they can get on Amazon. They can also go to ChristianPatriotBook.com. There's signed copies, promo copies, ChristianPatriotBook.com, or just Google Christian Patriot on Amazon and you can pre-order there.
I love that. I'm so excited about this, Taylor. I mean, like, super excited. I don't have time to read.
Too.
I don't have time to read very many books, but I am going to make the time to read this one. I'm super pumped about it. Thank you for all the work you've done. Just you're so intelligent. Your words are always wise, and just thanks for all the work you've done.
Well, thank you, Abby, and thank you for all the work you've done as well. You've been a pivotal player in all of this, and I think we're going to continue. We're going to have to continue, I think, to change the discussion, the conversation, and kind of address this all in a systematic way.
Yeah.
I think as conservatives, Republicans, we kind of be doing issue to issue. I think it's now like we need to change our worldview and our perspective as a movement, because I think it's kind of run its course.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Marshall, for being on the show. Thank you to all who are listening to this show. Please run out, go to Amazon, purchase Christian Patriot, and also Dr. Marshall has just so many other great books. All of the books I've read of his have been full of wisdom and just great takes. So feel free to purchase all of his books that he's written. And until next time, stay safe out there and keep sharing the good news of Jesus Christ.